I think isolation is probably one of the biggest indicators of suicide. Physical isolation, emotional isolation, mental isolation, spiritual isolation. You're isolating yourself from God. You're isolating yourself from your family. You're isolating yourself from your emotions. You're isolating yourself from everything. Isolation doesn't look like locking yourself in a closet all the time. Sometimes isolation is just somebody asks you how you're doing and you're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Or you need to cry and you're like, nope, I'm not going to do it because I'm a man, I'm tough. Okay. You're isolating yourself from your emotions. You're isolating yourself from the God who created you, who's trying to reach out to you and talk to you. You're hiding from your spouses, from your significant others, from your family, from your friends, and you're just isolating them and isolating yourself by not talking to them, by lying to them, telling them that you're okay. Isolation is killing us. This is the Veritable Veteran Podcast, bringing truth and exposure to the struggles veterans and their families face post-military. Depression, anger, PTSD, suicide. Who am I? What do I do now? Hey guys, welcome back to the Veritable Veteran Podcast. Today, we are going to be going through a study that was put out by RAND, which is R-A-N-D. They are a research organization. They put out a study on May 22nd of 2025 regarding suicide among veterans. That's the title of the article. You can look it up. I'll put the links to the article in the show notes. But I want to go through this. It's got some interesting insights specifically regarding which segments of the veteran population are the most vulnerable, and it may not be what you think. Also regarding the fact that 60% of veteran suicides take place amongst veterans who are not a part of or enrolled at the VA. And I had made a video about this, referencing this study a couple weeks ago. I think it was last week, maybe the week before, just referencing the fact that fixing the VA is not going to solve the veteran suicide problem. Will it help? Yes. Are there things at the VA that need to be fixed? Yes. It is a bureaucratic government organization. It is always going to have problems. Okay. It's never going to be perfect because the government has their dirty little grubby hands in it. It's never going to work the way that it could simply because the government is involved. Okay. So this study was put out. This is in 2025. The data from this is from 2022 because that is the most recent year that the complete spectrum of data is available. So in 2022, the most recent year for which data is available. Okay, so pause before we get into the study. The reason I do these where I kind of just read through the study is, one, I don't want to say something wrong. And two, I understand that you guys don't have time to sit down and just read this. So I'm going to kind of read it for you so you can just listen to it as you're doing whatever you're doing. Okay. That way you don't have to stop and sit down and read and take time to do this. I'll just kind of read through it for you. In 2022, the most recent year for which data is available, 6,407 veterans and 41,484 non-veteran adults died by suicide. Because there are many more non-veterans in the U.S. population, the rate of suicide among veterans was 34.7 per 100,000, compared with 17.1 per 100,000 for non-veterans. Okay, so the rate of suicide for veterans is more than double the rate for non-veterans. Okay. Each year, the Department of Veterans Affairs Office of Suicide Prevention releases critical statistics on veteran suicides in its National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report. To examine trends over time, the VA presents the veteran and non-veteran suicide rates adjusted to account for population differences between non-veterans and veterans, the latter of whom are younger and more are male. So veterans are younger and more are male. VA does this comparison by making both groups resemble the distribution of the U.S. population in the year 2000. Figure 1 shows age and sex-adjusted suicide rates for veterans and non-veterans from 2001 to 2022. Since 2005, the suicide rate has risen faster for veterans than it has for non-veteran adults. I think we all know that. Good news, the veteran suicide rate decreased slightly between 2021 and 2022. So in 2021, it was at 30.1 per 100,000. In 2022, it's down to 28.1. So it went down 2 points. Again, a little bit of good news. Okay. Getting into the main highlights of this study. Suicide rates remain highest among veterans ages 18 to 34, although most veterans who die by suicide are age 55 or older. Okay, so what that means is the rates of suicide amongst 18 to 34-year-old veterans are higher, but the largest number are 55 or older. Okay. In 2022, the suicide rate among 18 to 34-year-olds remained the highest of all age groups at 47.6 per 100,000, equating to 849 deaths. Veterans age 55 or older make up nearly 2/3 of all U.S. veterans. In 2022, veterans age 55 or older accounted for 60% of all veteran suicides. There were 3,860 deaths in this group. So out of 6,407 and 60 were age 55 and older. There's a lot of older veterans that are clearly struggling and they need help. They need people to talk to. They need support. They need community. They need to be told that they're okay. Yeah, and I don't know of a lot of resources for them. Maybe there are. I mean, other than the ones that we all know about, I'm talking about like just social support. Like, are there veterans on social media that are, 55 years old plus that are talking about this? Probably not. That's something that we need to look into that. And, that's a group that I think gets forgotten because everybody thinks that the veterans that are committing suicide right now are just young GWAT guys, and it's not. Clearly, I'm not sure of the math, but that's over 50% of all the suicides were age 55 and older. Wow. That's I read that, but I didn't make that connection until right now. Just that it's, man. Again, the rate among 18 to 34-year-olds is higher, but the total number of veterans that committed suicide in age 55 or more, the age group of 55 or older is higher. The total number is higher. Suicide rates are still elevated among men and women veterans relative to their civilian counterparts. This is interesting. 2022, the suicide rate for male veterans was 44% higher than non-veteran men. Age-adjusted rates were 42.7 for veterans versus 29.6 for non-veterans, and that's per 100,000. While the suicide rate for female veterans was 92% higher than for that of non-veteran women. Age-adjusted rates 14.2 per 100,000 versus 7.4. In total, 21 female veterans and 6,136 male veterans died by suicide that year. But female veterans have a 92% higher rate of suicide than non-veteran women. Firearms continue to be the leading method of suicide for veterans. 74% of veteran suicides involved firearms. I know that's one of the reasons that the VA thinks it's a good idea to take access to firearms away from veterans. I understand the reasoning behind it, but that is unconstitutional. And even veterans that struggle with their mental health have a right to have firearms. Now, is there a level at which, or a metric at which weapons should be taken away from somebody? I believe so, but I think that needs to be a very careful process, because again, that's directly in the Constitution. That's not an inferred right. That's literally written. That's the second right, the Second Amendment, the second of all the amendments of all the rights listed. It's number 2, right behind freedom of speech. Taking that away needs to be a very careful, very diligent process, and should be only reserved for those that desperately need it. So this isn't a Second Amendment podcast. I don't want to get onto that too much, but taking away that right needs to be done very carefully and properly, following the Constitution. 74% of suicides involve firearms. Let's see. Veteran firearm suicide rate has increased by 65% relative to a 40% decrease in suffocation suicides and a 7.5% decrease in poisoning suicides. 2022, 45.4% of female veteran suicides involve firearms relative to 34.5% of non-veteran women suicides, equating to a firearm suicide rate among female veterans that is 144.4% higher than non-veteran women. It has to do a lot with the fact that veteran women are not afraid of guns. They're not afraid of firearms. They've dealt with them, they've fired them, they've handled them, they've used them. They're not afraid to have them. So they're more likely to possess them. They're more likely to use them. Among men, firearms accounted for 74.8% of veteran suicides relative to 57.4% of non-veteran suicides, a 69.6% difference. Again, male veterans they're comfortable with guns. They use them, they're trained in them, they have them, they love them. So that makes sense. Veterans who received mental health diagnoses had significantly elevated suicide risk. Among the veterans who died by suicide in 2022, 40% had received care from the Veterans Health Administration in the year of their death or the prior year. Among these veteran patients, the suicide rate for those who were diagnosed with a mental health disorder or substance use disorder was 56.4 per 100,000, which was nearly twice the rate of those without such diagnoses. So, surprise, people that have mental health issues are more likely to commit suicide. That's not a shock. 64% were diagnosed with depression, 43% had an anxiety disorder, 40% had post-traumatic stress disorder, and 32% had alcohol use disorder, making these the most common diagnoses. However, this is an important one. This is one of the highlights that I took from this. However, the highest suicide rates reflecting the greatest risk, this is the population of veterans at the greatest risk, were associated with veterans who had a sedative use disorder, benzodiazepines, or barbiturates. So think like Xanax, things like that, or other barbiturates. Accounting 236.7 per 100,000 is the rate for veterans that have a sedative use disorder, accounting for 2% of suicides among veterans with mental health or substance abuse disorders. Or psychoses, which is 207.1 per 100,000, accounting for 6% of suicides among veterans with mental health or substance use disorders. So the highest rates are amongst sedative use disorder and psychosis. Those are the populations that are most at risk. Veterans at an elevated risk of suicide. 2025, we highlight the new information on subpopulations of veterans at increased risk of suicide who might warrant tailored suicide prevention services. These align with groups that VA's Office of Suicide Prevention has also identified as subpopulations of focus. So the VA has identified these populations as needing more help and being a priority. Among veterans receiving Veterans Healthcare Administration care, those who had limited economic resources consistently had elevated suicide risks. VA assigns a priority group to veterans who access VHA care numbered 1 through 8, according to various factors including service history, disability rating, income, and eligibility for other programs. The second largest group is Priority Group 5, which includes veterans eligible for care because of low income rather than a service-connected disability. In 2024, this group accounted for 759,704 VHA patients. From 2012 to 2022, veterans in Priority Group 5 consistently had the highest suicide rate, which is presented in Figure 2, which you can't see, But it is, yeah, they have the highest rate. So among other things, financial and economic difficulty, as they call it, limited economic resources, finances. It's finances. They're having a hard time affording things and surviving, which, surprise, everything's more expensive. And yeah, the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer, and the middle class is stuck somewhere in the middle. And it's just, yeah, something's got to change. But, you know, this is obviously an issue for veterans as well. Veterans who received care at VHA and screened positive for military sexual trauma had elevated suicide risks. Veterans who have documented past military sexual traumas are at a higher risk of suicide. VA conducts universal MST screening for all VHA patients. In 2022, the suicide rate among those who screened positive was 25 per 100,000 compared to 14.3 per 100,000 for those who screened negative. Among male veterans who screened positive for MST, the suicide rate was 75.5 per 100,000. That's a lot. For female veterans who screened positive, the suicide rate was approximately 25 per 100,000. So significantly lower, but that also comes down to perception. Male veterans who have been subjected to military sexual trauma, it's not worse. That would never take away from women that have gone through it. The issue is not the trauma, it's the perception of it in a male brain. In the male mind, it is a complete emasculation of a man. And I can't speak from experience. I'm not trying to say that I understand this, but what I've come to understand from what I've read is it just takes away their manhood completely, and it can destroy them mentally. And the same thing can happen to women as well. Um, but it's different for men. Not saying it's worse, it's just different, and it affects them differently. Um, and I'll just say it honestly, sometimes I think it comes down to the fact that unfortunately, in this screwed up, fallen, jacked up world we live in, women almost come to expect it. As horrible as that sounds, they're like, well, it was bound to happen at some point, which is so messed up. I've got daughters and I have a wife, and my wife has been sexually abused. Not in the military, but she was sexually abused when she was a little girl. She's talked about that. And it's so disheartening and frustrating to sit there and think that some women are just, they've basically resigned themselves to the fact that, well, it's going to happen. So, you know, like, God, that pisses me off. What I'm trying to say is, I think when it happens to a man, it's a lot more unexpected and shameful for them. And again, I'm trying really hard to be careful with what I say and how I say it so I don't get uh, misquoted or misconstrued in what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's worse for men. I'm simply saying it's different. And according to this article, the suicide rate shows it. Here's another one. Shocking. Veterans who recently separated from the military have elevated suicide risks. The risk of suicide is higher after leaving the military than during military service, and the risk steadily increases during the first year following separation. I've said this for years. I've been on Facebook doing this for, what month is it? May? Almost 8 years. Almost 8 years now. And I've been saying that first year is really hard because you start off, you get out of the military, you're in that honeymoon phase, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. I'm free. I can do whatever I want. And then a couple of weeks, couple of months into it, all of a sudden you're like, I don't know what to do. And I don't know who I am anymore. And then you start questioning, should I have gotten out? What am I going to do with my life? Who am I? What am I doing? And all these questions cause a crisis of identity. And for a man, that's a very dangerous thing. It's dangerous for women as well, but like I'm saying, it's just different for men. Um, and once you lose that identity, men find identity in what they do. And I'm trying to get men and myself away from that. We need to identify ourselves in who we are, not what we do. you can't find your identity in I'm a Marine or I'm a soldier, because as soon as that ends, who are you? Well, you're once a Marine, always a Marine. Right. Okay. I get it. Cool slogan and all, but I'm not going to formation at 5 o'clock in the morning to go run 3 miles with the boys. I'm not going to the field and training. I'm not deploying. I'm not doing all the things that Marines do on a daily basis. I can still say that I have the title. I earned the title of being a Marine, but I'm not doing Marine things. So who am I? Right? Cool slogan. It doesn't fix the problem. We've got to be able to identify ourselves for who we truly are, not what we're doing. So in the first year after they leave the military, it's an elevated risk. Certain groups of veterans, particularly younger veterans and those who had 2 or fewer years of military service, might be more vulnerable to suicide risk after separation. In 2021, the suicide rate for veterans in the 12 months following military separation was 46.2 compared to the overall rate of 34.7. So it's an elevated risk. It's not the only group that has an elevated risk. It's just one of the groups that's the whole reason I started this page and this podcast, was to address the transition and say, guys, this transition is hard. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It doesn't mean don't join the military because one day you're going to have to transition. It's the worst thing ever. I'm not saying that. I'm simply saying be ready. I'm telling you, it's going to hit you in the face. But now you know it's coming. So when it hits you in the face, you're not shocked and blindsided like I was, because I was completely blindsided. I thought life was going to be awesome when I left. And then all of a sudden it was like, bro, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I'm doing in this life. Like, yeah, I had a family. Yeah, I was, able to provide for them and care for them and be with them. But a huge chunk of me was missing. And had I known that was coming, it would not have stopped it, but it would have helped prepare me for it. This is an interesting note here, though. Certain groups of veterans, particularly younger veterans and those who had 2 or fewer years of military service, might be more vulnerable to suicide risk after separation. Guys, people that serve 2 or fewer years usually have to get out for something other than an honorable discharge. Either they're getting kicked out for disciplinary reasons, or they're getting removed for medical reasons or hardship reasons. Whatever it is, they probably end up feeling like they didn't get to complete their service and they don't think they did enough. That is a big thing among veterans. Almost to I wouldn't say it's not 100%, but it is way up there. I mean, statistics are made up on the spot, so I'm going to make one up. I'd say it's probably like 9 out of 10, 90%-ish of veterans that I talk to say I didn't do enough, or I wish I could have done more. Take that for what it is, but I've talked to a lot of veterans, and almost every one of them has said, I wish I could have done more. Or I wish I could have gotten to do this or that, or I wish I could have stayed in for 20 years. I wish. And it's just a constant disappointment. They look back on it with disappointment instead of fulfillment. And we have to change that perspective of, I didn't get to do what I wanted to I got to do what I did. And yeah, I could have done more. Would have been cool if I could have, but I didn't get to. And we got to move on. You got to just keep moving forward and just say, yeah, it is what it is. I got to do what I got to do. There's a lot that I didn't get to do, and that's okay. That's just the way it is. And it sucks sometimes because I wanted to do a lot of other things that I didn't get to do, but it's the way it is. So if you know somebody who served just a couple years, or even if they served 4 years, but they act like they're embarrassed of their military service, just encourage them and say, hey, thank you for your service. And then when they say, oh, I didn't even do anything, don't let them stand there and say that. You say, yes, you did. You took the oath. You stood when most of the country won't. And you said, I'm going to go and be willing to do this, even if it costs me my life. Because that's the blank check you sign, is up to and including your life can be taken from you, like by the U.S. government, by the U.S. military, if we ask it of you. And you signed it. It's a blank check. You signed it. Most people in the United States will not sign that. They will not do it. You did. Even if your service was just sitting in an office somewhere, or, handing out supplies or making food for people, you still did what you were asked to do, and your service matters. So if someone says that their service doesn't matter, call them out and say, yes, it does. Stop hating on yourself. If somebody talked to my friend that way, I'd slap them. So, I'm about to just like slap them, wake them up. All right. VHA patients who received community care versus care delivered directly by VHA had elevated suicide risks. Veterans enrolled in VHA are increasingly eligible for care funded by VA, but delivered in the community, largely because of the 2014 Veterans Choice Act and the 2018 Mission Act. In 2022, suicide rate among VHA patients using only community care or a combination of community and direct VHA care was 50.9 per 100,000. The rate was lower for those using only direct VHA care, between 30 and 40 per 100,000. Data are presented in the source document in a figure without more precise estimates. So that's why they say between 30 and 40, because they don't have a more precise estimate. These differences could be attributed to the varying characteristics of veterans who choose community care. For instance, 20% of veterans who exclusively used community care are in priority group 5, which is the low-income priority group, compared with 14% of those using direct VHA care and 16% of those receiving both community and direct care. Priority group 5 or lower income, they have lowered economic resources, as the article says. They probably can't afford to drive all the way to a VA clinic, so they're receiving care at a VHA, what do they call it? A community clinic or something, basically where they're using a private office that's funded by the VA. So they may not be receiving care that is as good as they would get at the VA. And people are going to say, well, the VA care is terrible. Well, they may be getting care of its worse, because they're obviously, they're at a higher rate of suicide. So I don't know. I've never used a VA funded community clinic. I've talked to some people who said their experience at a VA clinic was terrible. I've talked to other people who said the VA clinic they went to, the VA funded clinic they went to, was good. It really depends on where you are and who you get to deal with. And it comes down to people actually being good at their job. Veterans who had other than honorable discharges had elevated suicide risks. I think that comes down to feeling shame. These are my opinion. I'm not reading this. This is my opinion. I think that comes down to feelings of shame, also frustration with the lack of support when you get an other than honorable discharge. You have less support from the VA and from the veteran community as a whole. Veterans who had other than honorable discharges face a significantly higher risk of suicide, and suicide rates among this group are twice as high as those veterans with honorable discharges. TH discharges had a 45.84 per 100,000 rate, as opposed to a 22.4 per 100,000 rate. So, although OTH discharges are typically given for a significant departure from the conduct as expected of enlisted service members, certain groups, including those who have traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, or substance use disorders, are disproportionately affected. Because what do all those things, TBI, PTSD, substance use disorders, what do? They mess with your behavior. They mess with your decision-making abilities, right? So then you make a poor decision. You get branded as a problem. You don't meet the expectations of an enlisted service member, and you get an OTH discharge, right? And now it's like, great. Now what? OTH discharges can affect veterans' eligibility for VA healthcare, medical services, and other benefits, although policy changes have expanded access to some mental and behavioral health services, including emergency suicide care for veterans with OTH discharges. So those are the different groups that have an elevated risk. These are the groups identified through the RAND study, but they're also identified by the VA. Notable advances in efforts to prevent veteran suicide. VA's Universal Suicide Screening Program identifies veterans at risk of suicide and engages them in mental health care. So, guys, I know a lot of people, they do not like the suicide screenings when they go in for a regular mental or a regular VA checkup, right? Well, every time I go in there, they ask me, how many days have you been depressed? And how many days have you felt anxious? And have you been able to sleep? And have you been able to engage in normal activities? And all these things every single time. Guys, those screening tests have proven to be pretty effective. So I know that you don't like them, but they work. And this is in the civilian world as well. And they just keep asking these questions. And they've been proven to be at least uh, marginally effective, right? But even if it's marginally effective and they can prevent one or two people from committing suicide because they answered that screening honestly and they actually opened up to their doctor who's not a mental health doctor, and then they were able to get them to a mental health doctor, that's worth it. Just answer the questions. Just be honest. They can help identify people that are at risk of suicide. Okay. I know it's frustrating when you're not at risk of suicide, but just answer the questions honestly and move on. Like, we don't need to make a big deal of it because they actually do work. Since 2018, VHA has screened for suicide risk among veterans receiving primary care. So again, if you go into primary care, the ER, or specialty mental health care, they're going to use the VA suicide risk identification strategy, and they're going to ask you these questions. In 2020, the VA expanded this program and required all veterans receiving care at the VHA be screened for suicide annually. So again, they're going to ask you these questions, and it's okay. No one's saying you're suicidal. They're simply asking to make sure and check. If they weren't, everybody would be screaming at the VA about how garbage they were and how they don't care about veterans. So let's go ahead and give credit where credit's due. Researchers at the VA have rigorously evaluated Risk ID. The screening did not overwhelm the system from 2018 to 2019 because less than 5% of patients screened positive for suicide risk. Those who screened positive for suicide risk are provided a more comprehensive assessment of risk, and those who received this more comprehensive assessment had a higher probability of accessing and engaging in mental health care, especially those who were not currently engaged in the mental health care system. However, some providers have expressed concern about the time requirements to administer the second stage screening. Research has also identified potential ways to shorten the second stage screening to focus on the factors that are most predictive of future suicide attempts, such as suicidal ideation, firearm availability, direct suicide preparations, reckless behaviors, and a history of psychiatric hospitalization. So they're working on it. They're trying. They're making an effort. Okay. It's not perfect, but it is helping. VA's Reach Vet program identifies and provides care to high-risk programs. Created in 2017, VA's Recovery, Engagement, and Coordination for Health Veterans Enhanced Treatment. So Reach Vet is the acronym. This tool uses data from VHA electronic health records and predictive algorithms to assess suicide risk. Patients who have a risk score at the top 0.01% of the stratum, a population that has a suicide rate 39 times higher than the general veteran patient population, are contacted by the VHA provider who most closely worked with them to collaborate on reducing their risk. There is some evidence that the algorithmic approach might well be received by some high-risk veterans, i.e., very few report privacy concerns or increased feelings of hopelessness when presented with vignettes describing Reach Vet. And an outcome evaluation at one VA medical center found that within 6 months, most of the veterans identified via the program received some form of intervention afterward, including outpatient mental health treatment, psychiatric hospitalization, or safety planning, and none died by suicide. That's a pretty good success rate. However, the program was not necessarily received well by all clinicians, and Furthermore, 90% of veterans who died by suicide were not classified as high risk by Reach Vet, suggesting the need for additional suicide prevention efforts. Veterans receiving caring contacts have increased healthcare utilization. This is a big one. Launched at the onset of the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, VA's Caring Contacts program had personnel who send brief periodic messages of support to veterans at elevated risk of suicide. Eligible veterans include those enrolled in VHA psychiatric inpatient programs, callers to the Veterans Crisis Line, veterans with a recent deactivation of a high-risk flag in their electronic health records, and those identified by Reach Vet. In general, Caring Contacts are well received by many veterans. In a randomized clinical trial implemented among callers to Veterans Crisis Line, those enrolled in the Caring Contacts program were more likely to use healthcare subsequently. However, the trial had no effect on future suicide attempts. So basically, it's Implementation studies suggest that caring contacts do not reach veterans without mailing addresses, including those with unstable housing, and therefore miss reaching some veterans at heightened suicide risk. Basically, they would just contact them and leave brief messages either to them or on their voicemail saying like, "Hey, thinking about you, just wanted to see how you're doing." And it just helps veterans feel less alone. It's just a program the VA had. Well, let's see. Multiple VA efforts aim to prevent suicide by firearms. There's compelling evidence to suggest that putting time and space between individuals who have thoughts of suicide and the means that people use to take their lives is an effective suicide prevention strategy. Such strategies include putting barriers on bridges to prevent jumping, using blister packaging for medications to prevent overdoses, and making ligature-resistant structures to prevent hangings. Because firearms are the leading method used among veterans who die by suicide, VA has begun developing programs encouraging veterans to store their firearms securely, including a free cable lock distribution program for interested veterans and creating and maintaining keepitsecure.net, which provides educational resources on secure firearm storage and additional resources. VA-supported researchers are also developing and testing new approaches to promote secure firearm storage. Peer engagement and exploration of responsibility and safety is a peer-delivered intervention program that promotes lethal means safety to firearm-owning veterans. In 2024, VA launched a pilot firearm lockbox program that offers gun lockboxes at no charge to high-risk veterans who are willing to receive such storage devices. VA researchers also continue to test new public messaging strategies. Okay. Although there is early-stage evidence about the acceptability or feasibility of these efforts, there is, as of this writing, no evidence that these initiatives reduce veteran suicide or change the way that veterans store their firearms. Guys, veterans are not going to lock their firearms up with cables and, safety locks and putting them inside of a lockbox, inside of a safe. It's probably not going to happen. Veterans take pride in their firearms in general. I don't know the number or the rate of veterans that own firearms, but I know it's a lot. I own a lot of guns, and I've got them secured from my children, but I have them to where I can access them quickly um, in the event that I would need them. I carry a gun with me pretty much everywhere I go. It's just I don't want to have to outsource my family's protection to the police because the police aren't going to get there in time, and I need to be able to protect my family. So I have firearms, and I have access to them, and I don't think no amount of anything is going to make me give that up. It's just not going to happen. So I think this whole notion of we need to, get them to lock them up. As far as keeping them safe from kids, I get that. But if I have firearms, I'm going to have access to them. And unfortunately, if someone wants to kill themselves, they're going to find a way to do it. And is a firearm easier to use than something else? Yes. But I don't think it's going to help. The only way that you could potentially reduce the number of firearm suicides is by confiscating firearms. And then you're going to get into a really big problem when veterans start fighting back and start using those firearms on the people confiscating them. And then they're not going to be wanting to commit suicide. They're just going to kill everybody that shows up to take their guns. So, yeah, that's no good. Bad. So, let's see. Community-based efforts are creating localized efforts to prevent veteran suicide. VA has partnered with the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration to implement the governor's and mayor's challenges to prevent suicide among service members, veterans, and their families. This effort provides resources and training for multi-component state and city community interventions, as highlighted in the Clinical Practice Guidelines for Suicide Prevention and guided by the VA's Community-Based Interventions for Suicide Prevention model. This approach allows state teams to use different strategies at various levels according to the resources they may have available. The Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox Suicide Prevention Grant Program, legislated by Congress and administered by the VA, is a grant program that authorizes the distribution of $174 million to provide resources to community-based organizations to administer veteran suicide prevention programs. This program has funded 91 organizations that primarily offered trainings, raised awareness, sent mailings, built coalitions, or engaged in other media or marketing efforts. VA has also employed community engagement and partnership coordinators to work in communities to develop and support local coalitions to prevent veteran suicide through 6 priority areas: identify service members veterans and their families, screen for suicide, promote connectedness, improve care transitions, increase lethal means safety, and plan for safety. Although other similar community-based approaches have been evaluated and found to be effective, outcome data from these VA efforts are not yet available. So these are new. They don't have any evidence to support or not support them. Non-governmental efforts to prevent veteran suicide are expanding and have mixed evidence. Outside the VA, nonprofit and private entities offer services to prevent veteran suicide. In some cases, these efforts augment the behavioral health services provided by the VA to veterans who are not engaged in VHA care. In other instances, companies and organizations offer unique services, including retreats, performing arts courses, and therapies that are not offered by the VA. Face the Fight, launched in 2023, is a coalition of corporations, foundations, nonprofits, and veteran-focused organizations that raise awareness of and support for veteran suicide prevention. VA has partnered with some of these organizations formally. For example, in 2022, VA launched Mission Daybreak, which awarded funds to 10 organizations to develop novel veteran suicide prevention solutions. As described in a 2025 RAND publication, evidence for these effects of types of efforts at reducing suicide is mixed. So they've had mixed results. And then this just goes into additional resources. So that's the end of it. Bandit, quiet down. Grief, dog. Nobody tuned in to listen to you. I mean, they probably like you better than me anyway, but geez. So I don't know about you guys. I really love dogs. My dogs are their friends, their pets. But to some people, dogs can really make a huge difference, especially when you go through a company like Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs. Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs is a nonprofit dedicated to empowering veterans and first responders and other individuals with disabilities by providing highly trained service dogs that help people regain independence and improve their quality of life. These service dogs are trained to assist with all kinds of things from PTSD to traumatic brain injury to mobility challenges and seizure and diabetic disorders and even hearing impairments. So these dogs they just change people's lives. And if you are in need of a dog or you feel like you could use one, go to Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs and click on the apply for a dog tab and just see if you're even a good fit for one. Also, if you want to donate to assist in the training and housing and feeding and supplying of these dogs, go to Guardian Angel Medical Service Dogs and go to the monthly Paw Prints Club. Your donation enables these critical mission operations such as veterinary care, housing, food, professional training, constant communication with the disabled individuals before, during, and after matching them with a service dog, and continued support throughout the service dog's life, including training and veterinary assistance long after they've received the dog. So if you guys want to make a difference in veterans' lives, this is a great way to know that your money is being used in that way, and your gift can make a life-changing impact. And remember, together, we can unleash the power to heal. So the most at-risk groups: people that have a sedative use disorder or psychosis, and groups that are on the low end of the economic spectrum, low income, people that are struggling financially. Another VA study that I read said that one of the leading causes of suicide among veterans was chronic pain and dealing with chronic pain. The highest number of veterans, the group with the greatest number is veterans aged 55 or older. Again, it's such a mess, and it's difficult it's really hard. It's almost impossible to pinpoint, what would fix this. And it's a very mixed bag, and it's very hard to predict who's going to commit suicide and who isn't. A lot of the books that I've read talk a lot about how these prediction models and these screening questions are effective to a point, but it's really difficult to be able to say who is going to kill themselves and who isn't. They have risk factors. They have lists of these things like, what would make somebody more at risk or more likely, but ultimately they don't know. And I think, in my opinion, one of the best prevention strategies is just talking to people and letting them know they're not alone and being honest with them. Finding a group of people that you can talk to, or even just one person that you can talk to openly without holding anything back and say, man, I'm screwed up. I hate my life right now. My mental health is in the dumps. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I feel like I don't know who I am. I'm scared. All of it. You've got to find a way to talk to someone, and we've got to be able to receive that without judging them. We have to drop this notion that we can handle it on our own, myself included, because again, I went for a couple weeks here recently where it was like, I'm okay, I'm fine, I'll figure it out. And I didn't say anything, I didn't reach out. And then I started negatively affecting my family. And my wife was like, you need to talk to somebody. And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm fine. And she's like, no, you're not. And then once I finally got through my pig-headedness and realized, no, I need to talk to somebody because I'm not okay. And it's shameful to me that I would think that I would think I shouldn't need to talk to somebody when I encourage you guys to talk to people all the time. It's so hypocritical of me to sit there and say, I don't need to talk to anybody. I'm fine. Like I'm supposedly better than you guys or better than everybody else. Like it's so ridiculous. We've got to be able to talk to each other and stop judging each other based on, well, you didn't see combat, so your mental health, your trauma, your problems don't matter. Or, you only served 2 years and you got out. Like who cares what you did or didn't do? My trauma is so much worse than yours. Like cool story, bro. Cool story. So, like, you're more traumatized. Okay, cool. Let people talk to you and don't talk down to them. Just let them it's so frustrating because it's like all the time you'll see, someone talking to somebody and then they're just kind of like, uh-huh, yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that sucks. All right. Well, I gotta go. And because they just have zero ability to just shut up and listen and absorb and say something like, hey, I can't fix this, but I want you to know that I'm here and I'm willing to listen. And then be like legit. And I'm not talking about just talking to somebody on the internet and shooting them a message like, hey, message me if you get a chance. I'm talking about sitting down with somebody, climbing down into the hole they're in with them and sitting with them in the mud and the blood and the tears and just sitting there and being like, I've been down here. I've been with you. I've been where you are and I'm with you now. And I'm letting you know that I've been through this and you can get out of it. And that starts by just being open and honest and saying, yeah, I dealt with that. I did that stupid thing. I did that really dumb thing. I made a fool of myself. But you know what? I came out the other side because I owned my mistake. I took responsibility for it and I apologized. I made amends and I made a decision to be better next time. And that's just, another step further up, and our mental health is not this linear, like I just posted a video right before I started this podcast talking about my mental health today. And it's zoomed in on like the one, like it's, oh, look at how I'm in a free fall. And then I zoom out and I show the whole thing. And it's like, I started here and I'm all the way up here, but I had this little like boop. And like, I'm like, oh, my mental health is just destroyed. Dude, you started over here and you're all the way up here now. Look at how far you've come. Look at how much better off you are now than you were 5-6 years ago, or just 5-6 months ago. We have to stop focusing on just we live life like this and these are our problems. And we walk around like this, like, oh, life sucks. And it's like, we've got to pull those step away from ourselves and look at our lives from a more subjective perspective and stop and say, I've made it really far and I'm still here. Or you know what? Maybe you haven't made it really far, but you're looking at yourself going, this really sucks. Like I haven't made it really anywhere. Look at the people who have and stop looking at them like, well, they must have it so easy. No, I'm telling you right now, everyone is struggling with something. And some people have made it out of the deepest, darkest holes that you could possibly imagine. And they have become so much better for it. If you're one of those people that has made it out of those deep, dark places, say something to someone who is struggling. Guys, like I said in that video that I posted last week, we're all on the same river. We are not all in the same boat. Some people have friggin' yachts, okay? Other people have a dinghy. Other people are hanging on to a log floating in the water, barely getting and half drowned, okay? We are not in the same boat, but we are all on the same river of life, okay? Some of us are further down the line than others. Some of us have gone through the rapids. We've gone through the shallows. We've gone through the rough patches. We can go back and help others and say, hey, I went through this like a year ago. It was horrible, but you know what? I made it. Let me tell you how I did it. That may not be the solution for you, but I did it this way. I went here. I talked to these people. These people were able to help me because they went through it before I did, or they've developed a way to get through it that helped me. Reach out to them. And then if you're the person that's struggling, be humble enough to reach out. We have to stop holding on to our pride. It's like, again, like you're trying to swim, right? And your pride is like this 50-pound dumbbell and you're just holding it. And it's like, dude, if you would let that go, you'd be able to tread water a lot more easily. Yeah, no, I can't. Nope. I'm hanging on to it. Okay. I mean, you can hang on to it, but I'm telling you right now, it's gonna be a lot easier to swim. You ever tried to swim with a dumbbell in your hand, like a heavy dumbbell? Like, it's hard. It's hard. Just drop it. You don't need it. You don't need your pride. Your pride is drowning you. It's killing you, and you've got to let it go. I have to let mine go. I have to let it go all the time, like daily. Because again, something will happen and I get pissed off and I'm like, oh, that shouldn't have happened to me. And God's like, why? Are you better than everybody else? I'm like, well, no, but it shouldn't happen to me. And that's my pride. I should be better than this. Pride. I shouldn't be struggling with this. Pride. It's all pride. And once you put it down and you start realizing like, wow, this is a lot easier to move around and live life without that. Yeah, it is. I'm telling you it is because I've done it. And I'm telling you because I'm the idiot that keeps picking it back up. And I know what it feels like without it. I know how much easier it is. And I still pick it up. And I'm telling you, just put it down and leave it down. From somebody who keeps picking it back up and has made the same mistake 8,000 times, just put it down. Just leave it alone. You're going to pick it back up. I know you are. I know you, right? I know you. You know me. We're going to pick it back up. What I'm saying is the more often you put it down and give it up and humble yourself, the easier it gets. Because then you're going to look back and be like, why was that so easy? Oh, yeah, I wasn't carrying this. Dunk. You drop it again. Okay, now it's easy again. We've got to put it down. Reading that was not, it was encouraging a little bit, but not really. It was just, it's discouraging in the way that it's just like, how do we fix it? And I think the answer is we fix it. You and me, reaching out to people, talking to them, calling them, driving to their house, visiting them, sitting with them, crying with them, holding them, and being willing to do that over and over and over again. And developing these deep bonds and relationships, not just friendships. I'm talking deep relationships with these people where maybe you don't hang out with them on Sunday afternoon after church or, Saturday afternoon watching football. Maybe you don't, but they know that if they need somebody, they call you and you're going to show up. Those are the relationships we need to stop this. Got to put our phones down and go to them and sit with them. You realize the power of just like physical contact? Like the power of a hug is just unbelievable. Just giving somebody a good, strong, long hug. You grab them and you squeeze them tight and you say, I'm here for you. You realize how much more powerful that is than getting a message saying, I'm here for you? Now, messages matter. And I'm not saying don't do it. But if you can go to somebody and you can grab them and hug them tight and say, I'm here, that's a lot different than getting a text message or a phone call. If you can do that, do it. Because you can change somebody's life with a hug. You can change somebody's life with a message. Imagine how much you can do with a hug, right? So don't be afraid to reach out to these people and develop these relationships, because the more we're afraid, the less we're going to do it. And the more surfacey we're going to stay and the more fake we're going to be. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Oh, it's great. Yeah, life's great. Like, no, it isn't. Life sucks. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's good, but generally it's just one big suck fest. You know what's interesting is saying that reminded me. I thought about this and I wanted to put it out there. You know, the saying "embrace the suck," right? It's a funny, it's kind of a silly, whatever phrase the military uses. Just embrace the suck, and it's basically just like, hey, it's gonna suck. Just own it and move on. What it really is, and what it means is you're owning the difficult things, and you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna get dirty this week, so I might as well just go get dirty now and get it over with. Because you got, like, when you go to the field, you got clean camis on, and you're like, I don't want to go get muddy and wet and cold and sandy, and oh, it's gonna suck. But then when you do it, and it's like day 3 of the field op, and you're like soaking wet, you got sand everywhere, but you're sitting down with these guys, and you're like, this is a lot of fun. Or you're doing something that you're like, this is actually pretty cool. And you're with your guys and you're doing it with them, and it turns into like a really good memory. You look back on it and you're like, man, that sucked, but it was awesome, right? That's embracing it. Like, going through your mental health journey, like what made those field ops and those really crappy situations awesome? What was it? Think for a second. Was it the pain and the misery? Was it the hunger and the cold? Was it the missing home? No, you know what it was? It was the people you were with. It was the people you were with and the memories you made with those people. And yet we try to go through the rest of our lives alone because we don't like people. I think isolation is probably one of the biggest indicators of suicide. Physical isolation, emotional isolation, mental isolation, spiritual isolation. You're isolating yourself from God. You're isolating yourself from your family. You're isolating yourself from your emotions. You're isolating yourself from everything. Isolation doesn't look like locking yourself in a closet all the time. Sometimes isolation is just somebody asks you how you're doing and you're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Or you need to cry and you're like, nope, I'm not going to do it because I'm a man. I'm tough. Okay. You're isolating yourself from your emotions. You're isolating yourself from the God who created you, who's trying to reach out to you and talk to you. You're hiding from your spouses, from your significant others, from your family, from your friends, and you're just isolating them and isolating yourself by not talking to them, by lying to them, telling them that you're okay. Isolation is killing us. Killing us. In 1 year, 6,407 veterans killed themselves. And I would venture to say isolation. In every one of those cases, in some form or another, it's isolation. We've got to stop isolating ourselves. And when we stop isolating ourselves, it allows others to stop isolating themselves. Because when you stand up and say, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z, someone else is going to hear that and go, I am too. I didn't realize anybody else was. And then they start opening up. Guys, I'm not perfect and I do not have it figured out, but I'm telling you one thing that I have discovered through my social media pages is when I open up about a struggle and I'm in the middle of a struggle and I open up about it and I post about it, guys, the messages I get, the comments, the calls, people being like, thank you for being honest and real. Because everybody else gets on and online and they're like, oh yeah, life's great. It's awesome. Look at all my fancy cars and how happy my family is. It's all a mask. It's all fake. And when you put real out there, people flock to it. And they're like, wow, this person was actually honest and said that they actually suck at this and they're trying to get better at it. Honesty attracts people because people want real. And if you want to make friends and you want to attract people, be real with them. Be open. Don't be open with everybody and don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying walk around being a victim all the time. But if you're struggling and you have somebody that you talk to and you think you can trust them, be like, hey, can I talk with you? Can I be honest with you for a minute? Like, really honest? Like, I'm really sad and I hate my life right now. Like, things suck. And if you're receiving that from someone, be honest with them. Don't leave them out there like they just pour their heart out to you, and don't be like, "Oh yeah, that sucks. Yeah, sucks. That really sucks. Yeah." Like, don't be a douche. Like, tell them, be like, "Yeah, you know, things are going pretty well in my life right now, but like a year ago, I was like really depressed and sad or mad or whatever." Start being real with people. Stop hiding behind this mask of, "Oh, I'm fine." No, you're not. None of us are. And even if you are fine now, you weren't before, or you won't be in the future. Ugh. Yeah. So anyway, I love you guys. And I like I like reading these articles for you and, kind of working through this stuff and just giving you some information. So the link to the article will be in the show notes if you want to read it for yourself. It's got some interesting graphs in there. And I'm going to be going over some other studies regarding mast cells and the production of histamines in the brain causing inflammation. That's an interesting study. That's actually been around for a little while, but nobody's talking about it. So that'll be a really interesting read. What was the other one that I'm going to do in the future here? Let me see. Mast cells in the brain. Long term. Actually, I don't even know what that word is. Long term deployment clinical subtypes of risk and resiliency in brain injury and neurodegeneration. So we're gonna we're gonna go through that one too. So there's a lot of studies coming out about brain health and kind of the invisible injuries that have been impacting men and women that have served in the military. So just stay tuned. I'm going to be going over some of those. So I know I did the one on blast injuries. The mast cell is actually also due to like TBI and brain injury, producing histamines, and I'll explain what all that means and what it can mean for people, the symptoms and stuff. So it'll be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. But I love you guys. If you learned anything today, please share the show. This is the best way you can help our show and just help it to grow and help us to reach people. Just share the show with people, send them a link. If you don't like them, just spam them with it like 100 times. It'll be funny. And then, they probably won't listen to it, but it's fine. Just keep sharing it. And then, yeah, if you think it could help somebody, please send it to them. Hey guys, quick reminder. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, go to whatever platform you listen to these podcasts on and leave a review. That's the best way to help us out. It gets a lot more traffic to us. So again, if you liked it, like, subscribe, and leave a review. All right. Love you guys.